Hi everyone, this is Chad from WorkPath Visas, and I've seen some concerns online about the guys coming out of Zimbabwe, and so I want to share information because there's a lot of information that gets shared online. Some of it's confusing. We don't really know exactly what's going on, and so I want to explain what we do know. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what's happening, and I want to say this clearly at the beginning. You should continue your immigration case. I'm going to show you what the U.S. government has said, what's officially on their websites, and also what we're seeing in real life in the cases that we're actually processing. So one advantage that we have is that we're directly involved in the immigration process every day. So we don't just rely on the announcements. We see what is actually happening with real people, real interviews, and real visa approvals. So let's get into this. So let's first talk about the Zimbabwe specifically. The U.S. Embassy in Zimbabwe is currently closed for visa processing. Because of that, visa interviews are being scheduled in Johannesburg. So this is where you're going to go for your interview. Now, two situations that are causing confusion, but they're not specific to Zimbabwe. So one was there was a pause on all visas related to truck driving. So this happened in August of 2025. That pause has now ended. So we have drivers who were already received visas and already in the U.S. this month after that pause was lifted. Now, here's the important part of why I'm telling you this. The government never clearly announced that the pause was lifted. The only way to know that it was lifted is because you were involved in an active case that it affected. So the pause did not stop any of the immigration applications. It didn't pause any of the government from processing those applications. It only delayed the final visa issuance after a person received their approval at the interview. So we had guys that went to their visa interviews, they were approved, and then they waited until the pause was lifted. And then they got their visas, and now they've gotten to the United States already. So the second thing that's coming up is there was all of this talk on CDLs getting canceled for drivers because they were non-domiciled CDLs. So this is non-domiciled means they're here temporarily in the United States on like asylum, refugee status, some other temporary status where the government was going to say, no, your CDLs are no longer valid. You're losing them. Now, one, that does not affect us. Our program is an EB visa. It's for the green card. You become a legal permanent resident. And as a legal permanent resident, you have all the same rights to employment as a citizen does. So you are allowed to have a CDL. That's not affecting you. Now, there is some question on whether that non-domicile will even stay in existence as far as it'll be paused. I'm already hearing some states renewing licenses for guys, and I'm hearing some guys losing their license. But it doesn't affect our program at all. Now, let's talk about the presidential proclamation. So I'll bring up a few of these. Let me share my screen here. So I'm showing the screen where we're going to talk about the December 2025 proclamation from the president. So Zimbabwe is mentioned, South Africa is not. So let's just go to Zimbabwe. So in here, this is under section J. It talks about that they're going to have partial restrictions and limit the entry of nationals from 15 countries. Zimbabwe is on that list. But you have to go down further to see what specifically is getting talked about. So if we go to the next Zimbabwe section, now it's going to talk about Zimbabwe. So according to the overstay report, Zimbabwe had an overstay rate of 7.89%. And for these visas, 15%. What they're saying here is people that had temporary visas stayed past their visa expiration date, and they're restricting the movement of that because of the overstay. So they don't want more people coming here on temporary visas and then overstaying. So they are reducing the validity of all of those non-immigrant visas to what is permitted by law. So they're going to reduce that and restrict that. Now, what does that mean? So you go to this next section here, section 6. What does that mean? Well, there's an exception here. So there's exceptions for lawful permanent residents. This is what our visa gets. When you get our visa, you get your green card, you become a legal, lawful permanent resident. So you can see where the exceptions come into here. And that's what I wanted to show this. Now, if we go to Zimbabwe's, the embassy, and we see what it says in the embassy here. This is from January 1st of 2026. It clearly states applicants subject to this proclamation may still submit visa applications and attend scheduled interviews. However, they may be ineligible for visa issuance or admission to the United States. Now, this is where they're talking about more. So let's go through the whole thing. So there's also this visa interviews appointments area. So applicants should interview at the consulate of their residence or nationality. Because the embassy is currently paused in Zimbabwe, citizens or residents of Zimbabwe must apply in Johannesburg. And now this is where it gets the reality versus announcements. So even the temporary visa people, so the people that are on temporary visa, they can now come. They just have to pay a bond of $15,000. So announcements create changes, and then the changes have to happen, but they don't always announce that the changes happen and it opens everything back up. So even temporary people are starting to be able to come into the United States. Our process for permanent legal residents is much more stringent as far as background checks and criminal checks and all this stuff. Like, we're at the best case scenario of immigration when we're talking about an EB visa. This does, even though they don't specify us in here, social media vetting. I do encourage everyone's going to have to end up following this. What they're saying is, if you are applying for any of these visas, you're going to need to make your social media accounts public. This is what they're doing, is they're vetting your social media to see, do you have anti-American posts? Are you attached to any kind of terrorist organizations or hate organizations? They're using that as part of the background check. Because our background checks are typically more stringent, this is just expected that they're going to be looking at that. It's already in the Department of State process for us anyway, that they're going to be looking at that, but just wanted to point that out that there's. So what's interesting about all this is you see this proclamation from the president, talks about restrictions. This hasn't been updated, but then you see what's currently going on. Oh, they're opening things back up even for temporary. They just have to pay a bond. Oh, you can still apply for your interviews in Johannesburg. Oh, by the way, you can still submit all your applications. This is everything that we see in reality. So even when the visa pause happened for all CDL driving, we still continued the immigration process because we knew that that pause would get lifted at some point. And you don't want to wait for the pause and then wait an additional 3 years for your immigration case. Nothing stops. We submit your paperwork. The government still does their processing. They get you through the whole way. Doesn't matter. So this is the important part. What I want you to know out of all this is we are still processing immigration for Zimbabwe. Interviews are going to happen right now in Johannesburg unless they reopen the embassy sometime in Zimbabwe itself. The best information comes from actual real cases of what's going on in immigration. Announcements become old, or they become different, or the rules have changed. And so you have to understand the best information is coming from the people who are actually dealing with immigration. Legal permanent residency is the strongest immigration status you can have here. It's what allows you after 5 years to then apply for citizenship. Our program is the one you want to be in. And then CD eligibility is not affected by our program. So everything you hear about non-domicile or problems in that doesn't affect you. And the timelines are improving. So the visa bulletin that just came out for March, which is really the April release of the visa bulletin, just moved ahead 8 months. That means the process is now 8 months faster than it was last month. So things are moving. This is the best time to start your immigration process. Well, the best time would have been years ago, but the next best time is right now to start your immigration process. So we're excited to meet you in person and when you arrive in the United States. And if you want proof of what's happening, go look at our Facebook page. You're going to see the drivers who are actually already arriving. We had 4 people last week. So see you soon.